Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. A lot of different things go into making a game great. You've got the writers, the voice actors, the producers, all sorts of different people coming together. But one of my favorite aspects of a great game is the music. I love a game with a fantastic soundtrack, and I really appreciate the composers who can make that happen. Owlcat has blessed us with an update that walks through some of the work that went into creating a lot of the music for Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. This update is long, but for me, all of the content here is absolutely golden. So we're going to go through the whole thing. Hope you all enjoy it. So this update is called Religion and Synthesizers, and it's given by Powell Parapelica, who is one of the project's composers and writers of the game's main theme. And so most of this is written in his voice. It starts with the main theme. Every track of the game's musical score was the result of long and meticulous work. Each theme went through a strict vetting process, both at our studio and Games Workshop. It took us about 5 months to find the right sound for the main theme. The other composers and I tried many different versions, scrapping the ones we disliked, trying again and again. That search left me with some extra time on my hands, which I put to use getting started on the game's space battle themes. One of those themes became a sudden hit and caught everyone's attention, so much so that a decision was made to transform this track into the main theme. I find that very interesting because when I hear that track, immediately to me it sounds like main theme worthy. So to know that it was actually meant just to play during space battles is kind of wild. It's kind of crazy and makes me wonder, what are the space battles going to sound like when we get the full game? I don't remember being crazy impressed with the music that played during space battles, but I might be wrong when the game fully releases. As a longtime Warhammer fan, I've always wanted to work on something set in this universe. Imagine my excitement when I got the offer one day to work on Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, finally having a chance to turn my ideas into reality. I already knew that if I were to write music for the Warhammer universe, I'd make sure to try and bring together two things: religion and synthesizers. Interesting. Those two words are what come to mind when I imagine music for Warhammer 40k. So as I've said before, Rogue Trader is my introduction into the Warhammer universe, so I don't disagree with this at all. I feel like the music blends in perfectly with the lore. But for those of you who are more familiar with the universe, do you agree with this? Do you feel like he has the right perspective when it comes to the type of music that works with Warhammer? And how do you feel about the music that you've either heard previously or that you'll hear later on in this video? The choir is the main theme centerpiece. For the orchestral version, we recorded a live professional choir. But here's a fun fact. For the earlier version, I used my own voice, layered on top of itself several times over. We needed the choir to sound natural and human, which you don't always achieve with digital samples. That's why in the beta, as well as in the version of this track shared earlier on YouTube, the vocals you hear are mine, a choir of Powell Parapelica clones, if you will. So first I'm going to play a little snippet of the original main theme, and then I'll also play a snippet of the choir version as well. All right, and here's the choir version. For me, both versions are fantastic. I think Powell did an incredible job with the main theme. It really draws you in and makes you want to hear what the rest of the soundtrack sounds like. So then next he says that he used many vintage analog synths from the 1980s during recording. They have a very unique sound, owing partly to the old hardware, a kind they don't make anymore. One of those was the legendary Polivox. Over the years, it's been used by such famous artists as Rammstein, Goldfrapp, and Mick Gordon, who used it in the soundtrack to the 2016 reboot of Doom, among other things. And Owlcat did provide a snippet of what the Polivox sound like. Super cool. Super cool. You can tell that it's a very distinctive sound and easily see why it was something that he would want to use for Warhammer. Man, I love everything about this update. So awesome the way they provide you insight into that creative process. The setting of Rogue Trader is somewhat unusual as Warhammer titles go. Back when we started working on the soundtrack, we had something more classical in mind, with more strings and other organic instruments. Then, however, we realized the music had to sound a little more unpolished and rough. Dramatic grandeur provided by the choir and organ and other components typical of religious music had to be complemented with something obscurely down to earth. That approach was received well by us, by Games Workshop, and, as we can see, by you, the audience. Absolutely. We try to preserve the grand atmosphere of Warhammer 40,000 that fans adore, while also adding something new, that unpolished quality I mentioned, along with some other unusual sounds. For example, our music is rich in various types of percussion. It has unexpected instruments along with some scraping and clanging. This is true of the entire soundtrack, not just the main theme. The music isn't all about grandeur, which of course it can't do without. There's a more down-to-earth side to it as well. It's likewise about a motley crew of characters who accompany the player throughout the entire game. It's about the lives of lowly commoners. It's about our void ship and the places it will take us to, the most fantastic and grim corners of the universe, and it's about the enigmatic Xenos. We mixed and matched a lot and used every means available to create a hybrid soundtrack. Aside from the choir, the synths, and classical strings, I used traditional instruments from a variety of cultures in a few tracks, such as a banjo, a hammered dulcimer, and a bouzouki. I might be mispronouncing these instruments, I apologize, but this update is introducing me to things I haven't even thought about or heard of before. I processed them in order to give them a broken sound that's evocative of a diesel punk aesthetic. I experimented a lot with recordings of everyday objects around me, including coins, keys, and even a moonshine still. There was even a bowed string instrument I crafted myself out of a tin can, a string, and a couple of wooden planks. We used that one a lot in the footfall track. We had a different approach for each of the settings, aiming for a soundtrack that players would instantly associate with whatever surroundings or situation they were in at any given moment. The game features a great variety of worlds and locations, and we used every possible artistic means to reflect how out of the ordinary they are, whether it be the Void Ship, Footfall, the alien jungle of Janus, or any of the other biomes and settings. Each of them is unique with its own distinctness and charisma, which we sought to highlight through the music. Metallic clangs were one of the soundtrack's fundamentals, and every one of our guidelines said as much. A technique I used often was impulse response reverb. In simple terms, I take the sound out of something striking a metal pipe and blend it with the sound of a French horn. The result was a strange metallic sound that resembled singing. Singing pipes was how I referred to it myself. This effect appears most in tracks we hear when we're on our void ship. The Rogue Trader's ship is a hulking mass of metal, which at the same time is practically a living being. We felt that its machinery had to have a peculiar singing voice of its own, and it would be great for the soundtrack to reflect that. In the name of the Omnissiah, obviously. Super cool! Wow, that is so interesting to me. The process that they used to come up with this, man, oh man, oh man. And then I'm not sure if this is art that we've seen before for our void ship. I don't think I've seen it before, but again, everything about this update absolutely working for me. Super cool stuff. Footfall is a hub of sorts, full of people and bustle. Deals are constantly being brokered, schemes are being run. That's why Footfall music contains, among other things, the sound of coins and the metallic noises of moving augmetics. Janus is an entirely different place, a fascinating alien force. I spent a long time finding a unique touch for this setting's combat music. Normally, for a forest theme, the choice of instruments tend to be on the more classical strings and wind side. Our forest isn't typical at all. On top of being visually quite different from most of the game's locations, I thought that adding a bit of contrast in the music would be awesome. Something organic, but also unnatural, crossing a little into electronica. I used the didgeridoo, an Aboriginal Australian wind instrument with a very peculiar sound. However, rather than use it unaltered, I blended it with my own voice to make it sound like someone singing in a didgeridoo voice. Eventually, the team decided that the resulting sound carried the wrong associations when featured prominently in the tracks, seemingly echoing the culture of an indigenous tribe. But the sound did remain in the background, creating a strange sense of something different. Sick. Wow. I'm going to be paying so much more attention to the music I hear on Janus when the full game comes out. So awesome. Creating the Warhammer 40K Rogue Trader soundtrack has been a long process of searching, recording, and vetting. As is often the case, this type of work is an adventure, one where experimenting, failing, and starting again are all part of the process. Aside from the composers and the sound design team, the project's creative team, its team of producers, and Games Workshop have also taken part in developing the music and sound design, each making their own contributions. On your journeys as a rogue trader across the vast number of the alien worlds, we hope you find them and their music as enjoyable and captivating as we did. Can't wait for the game. Sick update, Owlcat. I really enjoyed this. Felt like it provided a lot of insight into the creative process. I felt like, especially for people who are into this type of work themselves, it just gives a lot of interesting ideas about how you can go about creating the sound that you want. Super cool. Super cool. I know this was kind of a long video for an update, but I just felt like it was going through. Man, really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for putting this out. I would love to see more updates like this from, people who are writing the code, from people who are writing the stories. I would just love more insight into their creative process when they're making these games that all of us enjoy so much. So anyway, that was the video. Hope all of you enjoyed this as much as I did. Appreciate all the support, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.